You're listening to Storage Nerds Podcast, where we unravel the best-kept secret of the real estate investing world, the storage industry. Join the grassroots guru in self-storage, Stacy Rossetti, in insightful discussions about finding, funding, and running these spaces, allowing you to yield the highest returns possible. Get your foot in the door on self-storage and discover how to properly purchase facilities, negotiate with sellers, and close the deal without worries. Start unpacking that investment wisdom with Stacy right now.
I have a very, very special guest coming and talking today to everybody.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And as Stacy said, I've been in self-storage for a few years now. And so what I thought I would do is kind of give a breakdown of what I did or how I got started, why I got started, and then a little bit about each of the deals that or the facilities we currently have. Once I've run through those, I want to talk a little bit about not only how we're running them and everything, but what we're looking for in the future. So my background, the very first storage facility I ever saw in person was in roughly 85, 84, 85, something like that. So to give you an idea, I've looked at these things for a long time and you know, I'm 49 years old, but so, I mean, I was around 10 or 11 at the time. And a guy built one local in my hometown, storage building that was built out of cinder block. And I remember when he first built it, I heard my parents and some of their friends talk about how that was the dumbest thing they had ever seen. And they couldn't imagine that anyone would actually buy something or, you know, would build something like that, because after all, who would rent a place to store something? You know, they thought it was crazy. And what's interesting is over time, it went from that's the silliest thing I've ever seen to every time we drove past, they would comment about how there's somebody else at that place. And that happened time and time and time again, to the point that my parents eventually even talked about possibly buying land and building a storage facility themselves. They never did that, but that stuck with me, and I always had an interest in business. And so that was something that I always thought maybe at some point I would look into doing. So as I got older, I owned a few different businesses through the years and still own a few separate ones. Primarily my main income comes from working with banks. Myself and a few partners, we own a credit card processing company, and we work with those banks. And I talk with bankers, I talk with business owners all the time, and I'm always curious about what they're looking to invest in and what the banks will support. And real estate, of course, is a great investment, but most of my banks love self-storage. There's a handful of other types of passive investing, I guess you could call it, to an extent, that they like, but it seems like self-storage is one that they were willing to get very aggressive on the loan rates, terms. You know, they were willing to be creative because most bankers view a storage facility as just literally money in the bank. It's a cash cow. It's mailbox money. You know, they use all the little phrases that we hear people talk about, but that's how they feel about it. And so my thinking was, if bankers love storage facilities and they feel that's such a safe investment, banks are really conservative and they're not willing to make a bad investment, you know, or a risky investment. So if it's good for them, it should be good for us. Since, you know, we started into the real estate world, we own some commercial properties and we've looked at multifamily and some other things like that. But I just always went back to self-storage being the safest investment for me. Our focus getting started, I really wanted to focus on the local market, mainly because I wanted to learn the industry. And so being in the payment processing space, I have a lot of clients that own facilities, and you know, I'm always able to ask questions, but I focused on my local market instead of doing something out of state, because frankly, I wanted to know how everything worked from the beginning, you know, and then if I could run it locally, although running it remotely, then I should be able to do that, you know, in other areas. So like, you know, Stacy, back when I was starting, I you know, always looking for those mismanaged properties, because I felt like that was the greatest opportunity to find something that was affordable, but at the same time, you know, if you can purchase it based off of what it's currently performing at and there's large upside, obviously it's a great investment. You know, I mentioned before working with banks, you know,
I was trying to delegate, pawn this thing off so I didn't have to teach, I'm like already in holiday mode. So that's why every once in a while I get the students to come on and talk. In the meantime, I saw some questions, so we'll answer questions while we do this. Okay. Is there a true supply of storage facilities to find good deal? Is there a true supply of storage facilities to find good deals? Okay, I mean, honestly, the truth is we have I was looking on Pipedrive because we use Pipedrive to manage all of our leads. And I remember I have 15 virtual assistants that do nothing but call owners. And right now we have, let me just check. I'm looking at Pipedrive. We have $98 million in offers out. Okay, $98 million in offers. I'm going to tell you, owners want offers. Owners want offers right now. They're, and it's getting more and more. I remember we were calling owners a couple of years ago and I couldn't get anybody to want an offer. Like we were really, the good thing is it was just when we were starting out with the turnkey acquisitions. And so it was difficult just because I was training everybody how to do what I do, but we couldn't get a lot of owners to accept offers. And now it's like every owner that if an owner answers the phone and you talk to them, you say, "Look, would you be interested in just getting an offer? I'll just send you an offer." Like every owner wants an offer. It's like super weird. So, you can tell like in a downturn, that's when that's the thing. That's like it's not the 80-20 rule. What's it when it's like the opposite, like the rule? I can't remember. But it's like in the downturn is when everybody kind of gets out of real estate investing. And then in the upturn, everybody wants to get in real estate investing. But in the downturn is when everybody wants to sell. A downturn is when there's no money, but there's so much opportunity. And that is what's happening right now is we're going into the downturn and more people are wanting to get offers. So my personal opinion, if you are interested in self-storage investing, you should be learning how to make offers and making offers. Now, I'm not saying the price of what the owner wants and what you want to buy it for equal each other, because that's always the hardest part of the whole game. But if you're not making offers, then really, you're just missing out. You're missing out. And so we have right now, just from turnkey acquisitions, we got 3 facilities under contract in the last maybe couple of weeks. And so I know for a fact that if you make a lot of offers, you will find somebody that will accept the offer that you want. All right. So just, just putting that out there. Okay, so make offers. All right,
So,
you got dropped off at looking at mismanaged properties.
Yeah. So mismanaged properties was our focus. And like I said, already working with banks. And so, those mismanaged properties, in a lot of cases, that actually helped with the bank relationship because the bank, in some cases, they were worried about what was going to happen with those properties. When I say I've done it all on here, I'm literally talking about I've done everything from take the phone calls to rent the units, clean out the units, take pictures for auctions and all of that. And I did that because I wanted to know what it was like, what to do, what not to do. And specifically, as I brought somebody on to help me, that I could hold them accountable because I knew what needed to be done. And like I mentioned earlier, I don't know if I had already dropped the connection by then, but I've had a lot of people that have reached out to me and asked me to kind of help them out a little bit with getting started. And a lot of them don't want to do the work, but if you don't ever do it, it's really difficult to know how to do it and do it properly. So, that's a piece of advice I would absolutely give anyone is you need to be willing to take those phone calls and clean out those units. You need to be able to do those things. And that way you can train, whoever you're bringing on board. The next bullet point, I did bring someone on to help me. I have a gentleman that was actually renting space to park a trailer, and he approached me. Actually, he was constantly reaching out, going, "Hey, there's some trash over here," or "I saw a car that I didn't recognize." And long story short, he started helping me run these properties, and eventually his wife came on board to help as well. And they have been just an absolute blessing to us because they are able to take the phone calls now as well as run the facilities, meet with renters, work out payment arrangements or anything that may happen. And they've been invaluable to me. And one of the things that we did as we grew from one facility to now 4 is we started to use technology. When I first bought the first facility, I ran this place with a spreadsheet and a virtual terminal for credit cards, and that's how I ran everything. And I did that for a couple of years, but ultimately, that's just not something that's sustainable long term if you really want to grow. So we use Easy Storage Solutions, and like I said, I do quite a bit with it, but my managers, they're in it daily. But this is our first storage facility that we purchased. It was, as you can see on the screenshot here, it's the storage mall. And this property looks pretty rough in this picture, but this is what Google has, and that's what I was trying to pull from. But some details on it. I found this property by actually looking at another business that was for sale. I saw a sign for a car wash, and when I approached the owners of the car wash about possibly purchasing it, they asked me why I was interested. And I mentioned car washes and storage facilities as two businesses that I was always interested in purchasing. And they said, hey, we have a storage facility for sale as well. And the storage facility was a much better value and had a lot more upside to it. And so that's this property. Now, when we purchased it, you can see this L-shaped building that's here. That L-shaped building has 44 units in it. The bottom building was an old shed that was starting to fall apart when we purchased the property back in 2019. And then in that left-hand side, you can see there's an old rusted looking thing. That's an old shipping container. And then in this screenshot, there was a camper, but that camper wasn't there when we purchased it. But we bought the property with the plan, building at least two different buildings that would give us quite a bit more, storage space. And ultimately, we're in the middle of doing that right now. So we purchased it in 2019. Like I said, it's 44 units. Our purchase price was $275. And that 275 was supposed to be for all 44 units rented and paying. Of course, as a lot of us know, that's not always the case. I was able to work with the owner to do some partial financing. And basically, they gave me a sale price and said, that's what we want. And so I went back to them with a couple of options. One was that I would pay their asking price because the money made sense, but they would have to do owner financing so that I didn't have to pay out of pocket the 20% that the bank wanted me to pay out, or I could pay less or my offer would be less and they could just not do the owner financing. They chose owner financing, and it worked out great for us because a few months later they came to us and said, basically, hey, we really would like for you to pay this off. And the terms of the financing was that it was the same rate as the bank was. We were paying the bank, which was 3.75% on a 5-year note for them, 20 years with the bank, but 5 years with them. And so they started coming up about every month asking us to pay it off. And I told them that we would be willing to do it, but of course we had to have incentive. And so thankfully they, at some point, I guess, were desperate enough that they were willing to knock about 15 grand off of that. So at the time we took over, we realized that the income was well below what we had been told it was. It was still paying for itself, but that was basically about all it was doing. Immediately started working on getting the shipping container out of there. That took quite a bit of time, a lot longer than I thought it would, mainly because I was trying to give it away. And I think if I tried to sell it, I could have got rid of it much quicker, but I just wanted it gone. We wanted it out of there because it blocked a major area for parking at the time. So we finally got that out of there. And, again, as I mentioned, we wanted to expand. So we're currently in that expansion process. We should have done this, frankly, in 2020, but each time that we started looking at doing the build out, we ended up buying another facility. So the current construction that's happening, we have 2 buildings that are being built. It's a mix of 10 by 10s and 10 by 20s. We're also going to bring in some portable storage units to fill in some gaps on places where we can't build on a permanent foundation because there's some sewer lines that run below the property. The city's going to let us put those portable buildings there mainly because they could be picked up and moved if we had to for some reason. So ultimately, that facility that we purchased for $275, and like I said, we actually have less in it because of the owner needing to sell it. or needing the money quickly. Current appraisal is 425, so we have quite a bit of equity in it. And then the construction itself on those 49 units, with the portable units being purchased and everything, that's all going to come in under 200,000. So we're going to be all in less than $500,000 on this facility, with the post construction appraisal of 825. So it's been a blessing for us from the very beginning. And one of the things that really was a game changer for us with this property was the moment that we started raising rates to the market, we started renting more units. And I know that might sound crazy, but it almost seems like the old owners, because they never increased rates, people were leery of why their rates were so much below, or so much down below the market rate. So the renters that we were initially getting, they weren't the best ones, because they were looking for the cheapest unit. Once we started matching the street rate of the competitors, our closing percentage went up, and we actually were the most expensive, or if not the most expensive, we're right there as one of the highest rent facilities in the area. So anyway, that's that.
How much are you paying to add those units? Like, how much did all that cost?
We're going to have just under 200,000 in it.
Okay.
And that's everything from grading. And we are actually installing some French drains, because there was a little bit of a drainage issue. If I go back, let me go back over here. So I don't know if you can see my cursor on the screen, but where this shipping container is, that's a fence line that runs right here. What you can't tell in this picture is that there is on this this area here, as well as this area here, those are hillsides that aren't very steep, but water does flow down those into the facility. So that 200,000, that's including a French drain that's going to run along the property lines here. And then this area at the top, we're going almost fence to fence with 10 by 20 units. And then we're going down here where this old building was. We're actually moving the building away from the fence line so that we can access units on both sides. But we'll have a 20-foot wide building there that will be, a mix of 10 by 10s, 10 by 20s. And actually, we're going to set everything up as 10 by 10s initially, with 5 by 10s on the ends of the building. We're going to, have movable walls. So we could do, in theory, we could do either 2 10 by 10s or 10 by 20 if we wanted to. But, we struggle to rent 10 by 15s. So we just elected to not have those at all. But in this area here, as well as this lower area, we're going to put portable units there, because the sewer line comes across here. And let me get that off the screen. The sewer line comes across here and then comes down through the property and then exits the property down here. So we couldn't put a permanent foundation there, but they would allow us to go ahead and put those portable units there and there. So it's going to work out well. And this is kind of just I'm visual, but I'm very limited in what I'm good at. So I'm really good with Excel. So this is kind of a rough layout of what the property will look like. This is that 44 units that's already there. This is the 10 by 20 buildings and then this is the 10 by 10s that are there. So does that make sense?
That's great.
All right. So our second facility is this little guy. And this one, talking about how we found properties. So I was driving past this place I shoot a lot of rifle competitions. And so I was on my way to shoot a local match that I'd never been to before. I didn't know this facility existed. And I came around the curve and saw a guy putting a sign up on this building, and it said storage facility for sale. And so this is 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday morning. And so I slammed on the brakes, asked the guy if he was the owner. He said he was. I said, here's my card. I took a picture of his sign. I said, don't even put the sign up. I own a facility. I'm looking to purchase more. Let me call you on Monday and see if we can work something out. He laughed and said, okay, yeah, sure. And then I went on my way. So when I left the match that day and drove by, of course, he did put the signs up, but he was really surprised when I called him on the following Monday morning. We talked for a bit. I actually went out, looked at the facility with him that afternoon, and put an offer in the next morning that he accepted. So we negotiated back and forth a little bit. But like I said, I saw it on a Saturday, made an offer on Tuesday, and we worked out the details that day. It's a small facility. We only paid $77.5 for it. The reason I was willing to buy the facility, though, the guy who owned it had ran it as a facility for a number of years, but he started having leaks and additional problems with the facility. So as people moved out, he started using it as a place to store his equipment for his construction company. And he also owns some multifamily units. So he would occasionally put some furniture and things like that in those units. So it would be out of the way, but available when he needed it. And the only reason he was selling it, he was going to turn it over to his daughter. But as you guys know, COVID was a thing in 2020. And his daughter is in hotel management. And she basically said, I just don't have the time. So that in turn, he decided to fully renovate the property and sell it. It does only have 15 units. And those units are a mix. Primarily, it's 8x8 units with this little, let me go back, this little short building that you can see here. There's 3 units in that building. There's a triangular shaped unit that's 6 foot deep and it's 14 feet long. But like I said, it's triangular shaped and really kind of an oddball. And then there's a 9x14 and then an 8x8 that's on the end. But we purchased it with it completely empty. So I was able to get inside, make sure everything was good. It was, there was no leaks, no issues whatsoever. Because it had been so long since he had operated as a facility, he had never bothered to do anything with Google. And so we purchased this facility in August, and it took until March for me to get on Google Maps. Now, in the meantime, this facility is only about 6 miles away from the first facility. So because we were full at the first facility, anytime someone called looking for a unit at our first facility, we would recommend that they take a look at this one. And so in March, we had 3 or 4 of the units rented. But like I said, we weren't getting calls. And the only way we were getting rentals was because I was, sending people there who called our first facility. In March, we finally got on Google Maps, and in 11 days, I filled the facility. I mean, it's just the power of Google. The minute it was on there, the calls came in. And I think one day while we were on spring break, I rented 7 units in 3 days while we were on spring break. And it's just, it was incredible the difference it made just being on Google. Now, one of the things that you can see, I mentioned about having Bluetooth locks. So again, going back to this picture of the facility, there is a gate here, and then there's a lower gate. But with only 15 units, there's not really enough revenue to justify using management software or using, installing a gate with a keypad and an opener and all that. So what we did is I found these master lock Bluetooth padlocks, and we have started to use those at some of our facilities. The way these work is really cool. There's a Master Lock has a website you can log into. They also have an app you can download on your phone, and you're able to add users who can, after they download the app to their phone and use credentials that are created by the system, when you add them, they're able to go to the facility, and you can see this blue light, this little circle that's in the middle. So that whole black area around there, that is a button. And so the way that it works is when someone goes up to the gate, they open the Master Lock app on their phone, they push this button on the lock, and this whole outside area that looks silver right now will light up, and it lights up in green. And so when the renter taps the lock that's now in green on their screen of their phone, it sends a signal to the lock, and the lock will unlock. It literally, everything turns blue, and you just pull down and you're able to access the lock. And it sounds much like I'm making it sound like it's difficult. It's incredibly easy, and it has been a blessing for us because this has allowed us to run this facility fully remotely. And anytime we would take a phone call from a new renter, we would simply get their card information, all their personal information, and then tell them to check their email and follow the instructions in the email. And so it's a Master Lock Enterprise Bluetooth padlock. Like I said, it's been a blessing for us, and we've used it in a few different places. What's neat about this as well because we're running this facility remotely, like we do all of ours, if someone doesn't pay, we can log into the MasterLock Enterprise website, or we can use the app on our phone and we can deactivate someone's access or pause it so that way we're locking them out the gate. And we still overlock them at the unit, but we can overlock them at the gate or lock them out at the gate. And so, it gives us the ability to control everything, no different than if we were using an integrated keypad like we do at most of our facilities.
Hey Chris, so we have a couple questions about that.
Oh, sure.
Everybody's interested in these locks. Will you have a record when and who accesses it? So how does the smartphone thing work?
Yeah. So what's really cool about it, and I will tell you, it's not 100%, because there's been times where I've went there or my managers have been there and the system doesn't record that we've been there. But for the most part, when we log into the MasterLock Enterprise website, we're able to see everyone who has access, and then we can see when they've accessed the facility. We can also see if someone has never downloaded the app, if they've never logged in, because the credentials are only good for so long. And the way that, like, we have one renter who, the day that they moved in, her son actually came to do most of the moving for her. And when he got there, it just so happened, just pure luck, somebody else was at the facility. So he didn't have to use the app. As a matter of fact, he didn't even understand it because his mother didn't explain it to him. He put everything in her unit, and to this day, that woman has never been there. Nobody has ever been back inside the facility to that unit. And we know that because their credentials expired without ever being used. So you can log into it. And actually, before we finish up today, just so I don't take a chance on wrecking anything since I dropped off the previously, I'll see if I can get logged in just to kind of show everyone what that looks like. But you can simply by putting someone's name and email address in, you can email them the invite, and it's super easy to use.
But do you need a network router?
No, it's Bluetooth. So there's an internal battery within the lock itself. So it's weatherproof. Now, I'm sure at some point, it could stop working, but there's no internet needed. There's no power needed. It's literally sitting there, just connecting two separate gates, and it works beautifully. Let's see the questions real quick here.
I was trying to unmute myself. That's it for that. On to the next thing.
Okay, good deal. All right, perfect. Okay. So as I mentioned, the property, it's small, but it's still, it does cash flow a little over $1,000 a month. And, $1,000, it's not life-changing money, but, it's a decent car payment. And, and the great thing is, we paid $77.5 outside of purchasing the Bluetooth locks. And we did go to, let me go back over here. Can't really see it in this picture, but in right here at the end of the building, there's actually a telephone pole. You can kind of see the shadow there. So we did ask the power company to install a dusk to dawn light there to give some lighting inside the facility. But outside of purchasing the master lock, and we do have some solar powered cellular trail cameras, kind of like you'd use for hunting or security. We have a couple of those that we use, one here that's facing this opening and one here that's facing this opening. That's the only expenses we've had at this facility. So there's been basically no CapEx. And, with that being said, the current appraisals, we'll just over 165,000. So it's been a great purchase for us. Now, at the end of 2020, like I said, we were in the process of looking at doing the build out at our first facility when this place came along. So in 2021, we started looking at doing a build out at the first facility again. But then COVID was still a thing. And I don't know if you guys will remember what everything looked like as far as supply chain. It was starting to become an issue. And frankly, we were staying full, but we still weren't sure what to do. But ultimately, instead of building out, I came across another facility for sale. This particular facility, I actually looked at this property and talked with the owner in 2020, in 2020, and they weren't ready to sell. But I spoke with him in 2021 in March of that year. And he was actually, for whatever reason, I just felt like that day I needed to go see him. And so when I went walking into this round building that you can see here, it's actually a round office building. Back in the 70s, I guess that was a popular thing. When I went walking into the building, I went in to see if he would be interested in selling. And I kind of had a relationship with this guy. And as we're talking, I just happened to look, and there's like a 4-foot sign that says for sale by owner that he had made up, but he hadn't put it out yet. So I just, good timing on my part, it is what it is. But I ended up, talking over the details, and very long story short, we put an offer in of 950, which they accepted. We did run into some hiccups along the way. One of the hiccups being that they signed a contract with somebody else after we had a signed contract stating that they would sell it to them for $1 million. So I guess he was trying to get the extra 50,000. And I didn't know anything about it until 4 days before we were supposed to close. We ended up not closing in May like we initially thought we would. The other buyers ended up suing the owner, and I think he had to pay about 70 grand to them. But ultimately, we closed in August. And the other thing that held that sale up was it was in bankruptcy. And I didn't know that at the time. It was never disclosed to us until, like I said, we had to go to depositions over the owner trying to, I guess, like I said, sell it to someone else. But when we took over the facility in September, every single unit was full. And when I say full, man, they were all jammed full. I think we had something like 25 units that had no locks, but just were crammed full to the point you almost couldn't open the doors. The seller had no records of anything. He did have some rental agreements, but not rental agreements on every unit. So we took 4 months just going through every unit that we didn't have any information on. We actually went through the units looking for something that we could reach out to people. And thankfully, we found quite a few of the renters who told us they didn't even know they still had something there. They were told that their unit had been broken into and everything had been stolen. And there were so many shady things that had happened there. So a lot of people were really happy to come and get their things. We had a few people that actually ended up, continuing to rent. But as you can see, physical occupancy by the end of the year was, barely at 51%. Economic was at 42%. Again, we were breaking even, and that was really about it. But my managers did an amazing job of continuing to work with renters and everything. And by March of the next year, we were at 83% physical and 78%. Currently, we are at 94%. Economic is at 94%. To give you an idea on what we've been able to do with this property, our first year, we were struggling to do anywhere from $7,000 to $8,000 to $9,000 a month in revenue. We're currently averaging around $14,000 to $15,000 a month, depending on the circumstances. Last month, we had a few people that were about to be auctioned that came through and made the payments. And so last month was an anomaly, but we were over 17 grand in revenue. But through a series of rent increases and just fixing units that were broken and were unavailable, we've been able to take this all the way up to from 2022 to 2023. We're going to see an increase in revenue over $50,000 just in 1 year. And like I said, it's a combination of rent increases, tenant protection, but also, taking, at one point we had 18 units that weren't even rentable just because of broken springs and broken doors. The last bullet point here, the recent appraisal, this facility is now appraising at over 2.5 million. And we've actually turned away a couple of offers that were just a little over 2 million. This facility is only 9 miles away from our first facility. And we've actually had several people who tried to rent at our first facility. And when we didn't have a space there, we were able to direct them over to this one. So it's been fantastic. And, using easy storage solutions, that's what we've used. I know Stacy and a lot of owners have had great success with storage. And frankly, at the time we were getting started, it just, I had several people recommend easy storage solutions, and it's worked well for us. We only use their software. We're not, we initially tried to use their call center, but it did not work well for us. I'm sure that it's probably better now than it was in the beginning, but anyway, that's been the case. Our fourth facility is this one actually sits in between the first one and the second one. So we have four facilities that are in a straight line just off of the interstate from 9 miles from the first one to the last one. But this facility, it's actually, it's not a facility yet. We purchased it because this large building you see on the right-hand side, that's a 12,000 square foot warehouse that has a few offices built into the back of it and a small office built into the front, but the rest of it is just an open warehouse. And we purchased it because we're going to take this 12,000 square feet and we're going to make that into temperature controlled storage. This little house that you see sitting here on this picture, that house was torn down years ago by the previous owners. So this entire open area that you see grass right now, that is all gravel. And then the pavement is there. And so we are in the process of getting everything ordered right now to not only build out the inside, but also do the exterior. And so, on that 2 acres, we're going to be able to convert the warehouse to almost 100 temperature controlled units. We're going to build a little over 150 drive up units, and there'll be a blend of, your 5x10s to 10x10s and 15s and 10x20s. To stay under an acre of disturbed land, we're going to not develop the whole thing. Mainly because if we go over 1 acre, the EPA will require us to put in a catch pond. So instead, what we're going to do is use some portable units there. And then some of the areas where we can't put a portable unit and we're not going to build, we'll use that for boats, RVs, camper parking. What's really cool is, the revenue potential at this facility is amazing. And, like I said, the post-construction valuation currently sits at a little over $5 million. So we purchased this property for $575,000. We're going to have about $500,000 in capex between the build out and some other things that need to be done there. I think we'll come in under that, but as I told my banker, I'm shooting high, make sure I'm covering all the bases. But that's where it sits currently. And depending on the weather and depending on how long it takes for everything to come in, we should have units available at this property to rent starting in March of next year. So it's been a whirlwind for the last 4 years, but we've had a lot of growth and been able to add these different facilities. And so anyway, that's where we are at this point. So
hey, couple of questions. What's the difference between climate controlled and temperature controlled and non-climate controlled?
Great question. So climate controlled, and I don't remember who recommended this some time ago, but they always said you should be very specific with what you say. So for us, climate control, the way that it's always been explained to me is you're controlling not only the temperature, but also the humidity. So at this property, the third facility, that round building is an office building. We don't rent those as offices. We actually rent those as climate controlled storage units because we've got heat pumps set up. So we're not only controlling the temperature, but also we're controlling the humidity and all of that. This warehouse, though, it has heat, but it doesn't have air. It has a vent in this it has a big giant fan in this lower end, and it has vents that open in this end. So when you turn the fan on, it draws air through the vents. So you can cool the building to an extent during the summer by moving air, but we're not actually air conditioning it. So when we talk about temperature control, we're controlling the temperature, but not the humidity. And that's the difference, as I understand it, between climate control versus temperature control.
And then, actually, I was going to ask you for that other one with the circle building. How does that look inside the units? How many units do you have in there?
So what we have in there are 10 offices around the exterior of the building. And then there is a small reception area. Almost think of like you going into a physician's office or something, and you have the little window with the receptionist. So the old owner maintained an office in that little reception office. We're in the process of going through our attorney right now, trying to get his possessions out. He hasn't been there in over a year, but he refuses to come and get his things. And so we're working to through our attorney to go ahead and get him, all of his possessions out. But there's also a conference area inside of there. So we're going to take that conference area and turn that into 4 additional units. What's neat is those between the offices that are there right now, we generate almost $3,000 a month in revenue from that office building. Once we add in the other 4 units in the conference area, as we build out those walls and things, we'll increase that by almost another $1,100. So, that office building, it won't be long before that office building is almost $5,000 in revenue a month to us between some rent increases and some other things that we're going to do. But like I said, currently it's just under
Was
$3
that was your
grand.
147 units or whatever that you had on that? Was that including those office spaces?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
it is. Yeah.
Okay, cool, good. Yeah, I mean that I love facilities like that where it's like, oh, I can add this, I can add this, I can do this, you know. You
Yeah,
have to
and
think
it's
outside the box to get income coming in, you know?
well, and our thought on it, just being blunt, the building was built in 1977, and of those 10 offices, some of them have carpet. None of them, we don't have 2 that have the same carpet, but some have carpet, some have linoleum, some have fake wood, and some are concrete. Some of the offices can't talk today. Some of the offices have sheetrock, while others have paneling. So when I look at what I would need to invest into renovating that office building to make those offices rentable as offices, it's an enormous amount of money for maybe an extra $500 a month in revenue versus taking the offices as they are and renting them as climate controlled storage.
I agree.
So,
Yeah, that's a great idea. Because nobody cares what their floor looks like in a storage facility.
no, I mean they really don't. And from the way we've looked at it, we haven't had to invest anything into that building outside of. I should have included a picture of the building. The building has glass for the front, and so we had the wrap signage put on the windows.
Yeah, that's what I
But
would do. Just put the wrap signage on. That's perfect.
yeah, that's what we've done there. But we,
Yeah.
doing it this way, we haven't had to invest anything outside of. We had one heat pump go down, and we've had to do a little bit of work with a new heat pump and a few small things. But all in all, we haven't had to invest a lot of money into that building, and it's providing a nice return.
But yeah, I mean, you got that facility for a great price.
We really did. I mean,
Whatever.
at the
Yeah,
time, it was priced appropriately. The reason that the other company that the guy, I guess, signed the contract with, the reason they sued him was they had a signed contract from him, but they were actively advertising it. They had a signed agreement from him for $1 million, but they were actively advertising it for like 1.25. So, they had people showing interest, and I guess that's why they were able to do something there. But,
that's
you know,
crazy.
it needed a lot of work, and we're still doing things. I'm waiting on the roofing company right now to get me the contract to sign to add a new roof to 2 different buildings that they look pretty rough, and they in the picture they look rough, and they look rough in person. But we're investing money into it, and really, I would not hesitate at all if we were going to list that property today. I would absolutely list it for over 3 million because I think the value adds there.
Well, good. You have a lot of really great facilities, and I love the progress. Is like you started out with these little tiny facilities, and now you're like everyone gets bigger and bigger, and so and that's really how it works.
Well, to me, it makes sense from the standpoint that I wanted to learn the industry, and I wanted to figure out, I needed something where I could learn how storage works, but buying a smaller facility not only made it affordable because we don't have investors. This is myself and my wife. I mean, we financed everything, us and the banks. But I mean, all the down payments, the capex, all that stuff. That's something that we're paying out of pocket. I'm not taking on investors, and so buying a smaller, low cost facility, it allowed me to find something that I could afford, but it also allowed me the opportunity to be able to take those calls and do the work without me. There's no way I could take on all these different facilities at one time and still run my other companies because I couldn't take all the calls and do all those things. But, with only 44 units, that first facility, I could manage that in between, meetings with my clients or whatever. So it just made sense to me and it's worked out really well for us. And as you mentioned, I mean, we've got offers in right now on 3 different local facilities that I don't know what's going to happen on them. Frankly, the REITs are driving the prices up, but one of these properties in particular has been under contract with 3 different REITs that still hasn't closed, because it's actually not REITs, it's wholesalers they're getting it under contract, and then they can't seem to flip it, because when they start the due diligence, they realize, oh my gosh, there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. And so,
Yeah.
eventually we may end up with 1 or 2 of these just because we know the market and we're willing to do the work. But now that we run all of these remotely, I am starting to look outside the area, because we have a system that seems to work pretty well for us, and I think we can test it in the other markets. And obviously, I joined in Storage Nerds a little over a year ago, just because, I mean, we were all renting the facilities and everything, but I wanted to see what other people are doing, and the best way to do it is to talk with them. So that's why Storage
Yeah.
Nerds was a great fit for us.
Yeah. And I really, like I said, I really love the facility owner mastermind. Like yesterday was so good.
Yeah, it really was.
It's just like sharing ideas and what's working or not. And there's like so many things that everybody's doing that, it's like, oh yeah, I should try that.
Yep,
Yeah.
100%.
Cool, good, awesome. Well, we're running out of time. It's past 2 o'clock, so I appreciate you guys all hanging in there. And Chris, Chris is doing a great job. He's the perfect example, I think, of like starting small and then building your way up. And there is nothing wrong with doing that. Okay. So again, thank you, Chris, for coming on, hanging out with us today.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Storage Nerds. Hope this informative conversation inspired you to go out there and jump into this highly profitable business venture that people rarely talk about. Get more tips on storage space investing at www.stacyrossetti.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a rating. Together, let's build that thriving passive income one storage space at a time. Until next time.